It is said that Britain has more ghosts per square mile than any other country in the world, and Warwickshire is said to be the most haunted of all its counties. Be it black dogs that roam mysteriously, the reincarnation of lost souls, ghostly coaches and women in white, Warwickshire seems to have ghosts of all kinds throughout its long history. Shrieve's House Barn in Sheep Street, Stratford-upon-Avon, is considered to be one of the, if not the, most haunted properties in the country. The Shreeve's house is one of the oldest still lived-in houses in the town. In the 16th century, the building was a tavern, and the tavern keeper, William Rogers, is said to be the inspiration for Shakespeare's character Sir John Falstaff. There's been a property on this site since 1196. The location consists of a private house and the large 500-year-old building to the rear that presently houses a museum depicting the property's sometimes chilling history. The first known tenant of the building was William Shrieve in 1536, an archer to King Henry VIII. There have been several fires in the property, the most destructive of which occurred in 1595, after which the site would have been extensively rebuilt. The location also bore witness to the plague in 1564, and again almost 100 years later. During the mid-17th century, parliamentary Dutch mercenary soldiers were billeted at the site under Colonel Bear, the wounded brought back to a makeshift hospital after the first battle of the English Civil War at Edge Hill in October 1642, where many died. Also during this period, a small cottage was attached to the end of the barn in what was referred to as the Witch of Sheep Street's cottage, and is now known as the Witch's Courtyard. The local witches' coven revere this area and still practice their ancient ceremonies there, particularly at Halloween. There are a number of dominant spirits said to be active in the property: an archer from the time of Henry VIII, a serial murderer from the 18th century, a little girl who was a pickpocket in the tavern, a Catholic gentleman from the time of the Reformation, and a justice of the peace who used his power to run an extortion ring with threats, violence and trumped-up charges. There have also been sightings of the parliamentary soldiers, although it is more common to experience their injuries. Also the victims of the serial murderer, children and animals. During certain times of the year, a dark hooded figure with red glowing eyes can be seen, said to be a very ancient spirit, which simply stands and watches you. Which ones have you seen personally? What experiences have you had?
I've had a number of experiences. The first was when actually, before we took over the building, I was visiting the museum and I was in the room up top where we've now got the Tudor Market. I was standing reading a board, display board, and I felt two distinct taps on my shoulder, quite heavy, that I thought were my wife. When I turned around, she was at least 10 foot away from me, and she could not have done that and backed off with the wooden floor. I was hosting a paranormal investigation in 2007. Whilst I was in the area that's now known as the ship room, I looked through the doorway during the vigil. The medium was actually trying to work with the energy, and I saw a hooded figure with red eyes, which I have, after some investigation, been told that is an elemental. It's not actually a spirit of a person, it is just a very, very basic energy, and it's only seen in this particular building in November and December.
It was actually while I was taking a tour around, and I gathered the group into one particular room, and I will stand in one place so that they don't start going down the stairs, and where I was standing was facing the door, so I could see the door, they couldn't. And I always have a quick visual check, make sure I haven't lost anyone on the group, and then when I looked at the door I thought, hello, who's that guy? And then I realised that it was someone who hadn't been with us at the beginning. What I saw then for a very brief time was a short man, about 5 foot, 5'2", bald, kind of middle-aged, maybe a little bit younger, and this is in the dark, wearing what can I describe as kind of poor clothes, sort of like, he obviously wasn't a rich person. It made it difficult to define exactly what era he came from, obviously pre-20th century, but after that, he wasn't there long enough for me to make an inventory of what he was wearing. However, I didn't feel frightened, I didn't feel threatened. It was literally that he was a bystander whose attention had been taken by these people walking through the building, and I was just there to see what it was all about. Then he was gone.
What made you want to spend the night in a haunted house?
Curiosity.
Total curiosity.
Did you consider yourself religious or spiritual?
No, totally open-minded. Not religious, not spiritual, inquisitive. Wanting to know. The night we came here, we didn't realise we were going to spend the whole night alone, just the two of us, because there were about 30 people. But as time went on, we all met about 9 o'clock at night on the Halloween night, and as time went on, they were dropping and dropping and dropping. Oh, I don't like this. One girl said that she was touched and pushed and she was crying, so her boyfriend took her home. One by one they disappeared, and I said to Melissa, well, how many of us are there? And we realised it was just us, which was better, because nothing could be done, and nobody could fool around. There were no surprises. It was just us, and what we saw and experienced we know to be real.
The first thing that happened to us particularly was in a group of about 6, 7, 8 people. We did some table tipping, and the table started rocking backwards and forwards, and it got so aggressive that it was coming up like this, and in the end one of the legs snapped off, and it went upright. The one that was in midair snapped off, at which point a lot of people left the building.
It was probably about 1 o'clock in the morning when things began to happen. I mean, the first thing I saw, and Melissa will tell you she equally saw them, were flashing lights all around the place, which I subsequently learned were possibly orbs, spirits trying to materialise. The grizzly bear, on the first floor there is a full-size brown bear, a grizzly bear creature, which was a static display, of course, and it was wrapped in chains, very large rusty chains. I fell asleep about 3 o'clock in the morning, only for about 10-15 minutes, but I was woken by the movement of chains, and you sort of rub your eyes and think, can I believe what I'm hearing and what I'm seeing, as you could see little in the dark. But the following morning, the bear had been wrapped in chains and locked in chains. The following morning the chains were on the other side of the room, and they'd been unwrapped from the bear, so clearly that's what had woken me up, the movement of the chains.
No. This was... Oh,
I thought the bear was in a different place. Have they moved the bear?
I thought the bear was
over there,
in there,
somewhere.
behind us,
Yeah.
in a different room.
These are definitely...
Is this?
Yes, now look, all of this, I'm sure the bear was in a different place. We'll have to ask Janet.
I think this whole area was the tavern, wasn't it? And the bear was back through there.
I think you're right.
Yeah,
the bear was through
the
there.
tavern.
And these chains, all I could hear in the dark was this. And these chains were off and all across the floor.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
And there's no way... Well, I can't even lift that off without putting tension on it, so it could have fallen off.
And you didn't hear the sound of them being removed or anything like that?
All I could hear was this.
Really?
Yes.
Remember, it was totally dark.
And then the chains were where through?
Well, I think...
Across this floor, weren't they?
Bear in mind, the building's changed.
Sure.
I thought the bear was here.
Yeah, I think the bear was
And the
through there.
chains were over there.
Interesting.
It was getting towards the end, and my backpack was on the other side of the room, in the playgroup. And I said to my dad, if anything else is going to happen, it needs to happen soon, because the event's going to be finished soon. And my Discman, which was in my bag, with headphones plugged in, turned itself on full blast, which must have been pretty loud to even be able to hear it through phone earphones. So we both sort of instantly looked at the bag and walked over and turned that off. That was rather chilling.
Where was the Walkman? Which area was that in?
That was... We were sitting in this room here, and it was just through that curtain by the balcony.
Right. That's the area where the...
That's where the bag was.
Yeah.
It went off inside the bag.
And that's the area where the guy is supposed to have hung himself, isn't it?
Yes,
Yes.
yeah, that's where I felt very
Which
dizzy
we didn't
through
know
there.
until the following day, of course.
Interesting.
Because he didn't tell us anything, which is good, really, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah,
much better that he
yeah,
did.
yeah,
Much
yeah.
better that we discovered things. Otherwise, it could be said, well, he already told you that. The other thing we experienced, which we didn't know at the time, we were told later, the building used to be a tavern, and we could smell stale beer, putrid beer, and smoke, cigarette smoke, pipe smoke, quite strongly. But we could only smell it in the one area, and we were told later, the following day, that that was the main bar, if you like, the main tavern part, which was again amazing because we didn't know anything about that.
What were your experiences in this room? Do you remember?
Smelling a lot of burning and a lot of alcohol.
A lot of stale
All over the
alcohol,
place. Stale alcohol,
and we
yeah.
both experienced that.
It felt like a very busy room, like there were a lot of people in here at once, even though there was just the two of us.
And also, do you remember we could sense smoke and our eyes became sore? Do you remember that?
Yeah, I do remember. They were
We both had
watering, yeah.
sore eyes as if we were being affected, if you like, by smoke that we could smell but couldn't see.
Mm-hmm.
That was literally standing here, wasn't it?
Yeah. Well, there was a chair, wasn't there?
There was a
against
chair.
that wall
Yes.
that you sat in,
I sat in
and
it.
I sat on the floor next
Yeah.
to you.
That's absolutely right.
And this is all sort of open, and there was the pub effect along there, wasn't there?
Yes, yes, none of this was here.
No.
It was obviously been added. Yes, absolutely right.
You stayed obviously through the night till about sort of 7:30.
Yes, yes, the proprietor came to get us at 7:30.
Okay. Now this is the first time in 7 years you've been back
Yes.
to Shrieve's
Yeah.
house.
Yeah.
But obviously that night has spurred an interest in this kind of field of research.
Very much so.
7 years on, looking back, because it's obviously, the parasuggestion or a whole host of other things, but 7 years on, looking back at that night, how clear are you on the things that you went through? Are they still 100%? You look back and say, yeah, this is...
Definitely,
Totally.
without any doubt.
They were real, and I for one was the biggest skeptic on the planet, thinking, oh well, it'll be a fun night, nothing's going to happen. But when things started to happen, you begin to question your own thoughts, if you like. No, it's very real still in our minds.
Yeah.
Not the sort of thing that happens every day, put it that way.
It was apparently a 17th century knife sharpener, used to travel around the various towns and villages in Warwickshire. And it seems that he's actually may have had some sort of dislike of women, because he believed to have raped and murdered at least 20 women. He has shown himself to females that have been on investigations, and they have been isolated from other people, or distant, and they've physically been touched intimately. They've smelt his breath on them, which is very foul, as you can imagine. In the 17th century, they didn't have dentists, didn't have toothbrush or toothpaste, didn't wash, foul smell of stale beer, tobacco, not BO as well, touched their hair, touched them intimately, and his energy can be very oppressive and intimidating. Some people actually believe that he was actually set upon. He may well have been set upon by people that disapproved of his actions.
Which are the sightings which are the most common?
John Davis, as we spoke before, is a very common one. A young girl called Lucy, who's a local urchin and pickpocket. She's shown herself quite frequently, and we get sometimes people have their rings, like someone's fiddling with their rings or pulling on their coattails, as a young child would. She was believed to be about 8 or 9, but looks like she was 6 or 7, very undernourished, blonde hair. Could be quite playful. She was a pickpocket, so that's why we expected to, things have sometimes moved and people have had to put something down, it's been found somewhere else. Unfortunately, she apparently came to a nasty end because she was injured badly in a fire, and her wounds became gangrenous and they thought she'd died. And they sold her body to a local doctor who was studying anatomy, and when he made an incision on her stomach, she came out of the coma, but unfortunately died of shock.
You had experiences as well with the little girl Lucy, was that right?
Yes, on and off throughout the night I had my hands down by my side most of the night, and a lot of the time I felt like my fingertips were being touched. I kept feeling a coldness going up my hand, and eventually after a couple of hours I kept saying my hand's going cold. Eventually the cold went across my entire hand and over the back as if someone was holding my hand, and I said to whoever was there at the time, it was before everyone had gone at this stage, whoever was left, I said I can feel someone's holding my hand.
About 11 o'clock.
And yeah, about that time, and they said, oh, maybe it's Lucy. And I said, well, who's Lucy? And Lucy is a young child who sort of circulates around some of the oldest buildings in Stratford. Didn't really think too much of it, so I thought, it could just be a draft or something. But later on in the night, kept feeling this coldness, and it actually seemed to follow me after I left the building. When we got in the car and drove home, I could feel a coldness directly behind me, and it carried on for a good couple of weeks. I kept finding objects that would appear in my room, like sort of foam balls and pieces of rock and pebbles and things like that, and I still am not sure to this day how to explain it, but Lucy is apparently a very playful little girl who likes company and likes somebody to play with and latches on to young women, so good possibility that she did follow me home that night.
And the foam balls and the pebbles or rocks in your room, those weren't yours?
No, I'd never seen them before in my life.
So they were just...
I don't know where they came from.
No, we still can't explain it, no.
I'm doing the tours, I don't get nervous at all, but when I'm with, someone else is doing something, the atmosphere seems to be really, really, completely different. It's almost like it's a different building.
Mm.
It's quite an odd feeling, really.
Probably most haunted houses, I think, during the day, probably seem quite reasonable, but at night...
Well, I can remember going on Ben's tour, do you remember? And thinking, oh God, this is quite atmospheric. And I thought, this is strange, I've walked through here probably 1,000 times now. Mm. But when I was at the back of Ben's tour, it just felt very, very different.
Yeah, and you feel quite vulnerable being at the back as well, because you've got obviously the lamp at the front, and at the back you're aware there's nobody behind you. Mm. It does make a difference, and obviously you're the furthest from the light.
Sure.
This is William Shrieve. We keep having William Shrieve here as who the house is named after, Shrieve or Sheriff the Reef. He's one of actually, it's a name for sheriff, and he actually does still sheriff the property, or so it's said, and he does look after everybody, and everybody says good morning William to him. They will say hello, and even on the tours we encourage people to say hello to William, because he's a protective spirit.
Oh, well, hello to William.
Yeah, it's always a good idea. When he's seen, he's quite a tall, broad-shouldered man.
Kind of heroic sort of figure.
In a way, but it's also because he's a long bowman. He's got the wide shoulders.
Ah, okay.
But he looks after people. Sometimes people say they feel like a warmth behind them. This whole thing about spirits being cold. He's actually quite warm, so I'm not sure what that means. Obviously not a negative thing in terms of William. Well, I'd probably call on little Lucy in here. And again, they're all everywhere, but there's certain areas that they favour. So she's been seen here lots of times on the ghost tours, sitting on the shelves. People reported afterwards, a little girl sitting on the shelf. Or even during the day, people said, I've seen a little girl with a little smudge on her nose, which could pertain to how she ended up in the fire of 1595. It's very strange. We had another person said, you know, you can't have children in there dressed up. It's against the law. And of course we said, well, we haven't got children dressed up in there at all. So she's actually...
So they've actually seen her?
She's actually the most seen spirit we have, actually. She's actually quite strong, even though she's a little girl.
Maybe that's the reason, is because she's a little girl. They're isolated character and in need of family or friends, or looking at that kind of level, maybe?
Yeah, it could be. I mean, she's very small. She looks like she's about 6 years old, but apparently she's more 8 or 9.
Okay.
But she's tiny down here. Again, I'll bring a little crystal up, see if she wants to play with that, because like any child, she does like to play.
Yeah, cool.
I mean, people have picked up on Civil War soldiers in this area, but they tend to be more ghostly than spirit. As I said to you before, the difference. So sometimes it's like at certain times of the year, it feels like a whole troop is literally walking through the building. But our particular Civil War spirit is seen literally hanging around over the top of the stairs here.
Literally hanging?
Literally, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Hanging from up here.
Really? I can imagine that's not really the kind of thing you want to
No.
kind of see.
No. You know, as I mentioned before, they're actually Dutch mercenaries. And one medium picked up, his name is Lee, which doesn't sound particularly Dutch to me, but we still call him Lee, because then he knows who I'm talking about. So I will ask Lee if he'll come forward. He's only young, he's about 15. He says that he tells our mediums he didn't actually commit suicide. He wasn't hung by them, he committed suicide to stop them the further torture.
Oh, really?
They thought he was a spy.
Oh, really?
But he's a very lonely young man, but he has been moved on, so he comes back from his own free will. Most of the spirits here have been moved on, in one way or another, and they just come back because they want to.
By moved on, is that moved on by
Some
who?
spirits are kind of trapped here, and they don't feel able to move on for whatever reason, through, you know, sadness or misery or unfinished business. Some don't want to be moved on, such as John Davis, because he comes from a time that you're going to be punished. So he prefers to stay here, and hopefully, you know, we tell people not to move on, spirits that don't want to be moved on.
Sure. I suppose it's about being respectful, isn't it, I guess?
Absolutely, that's the whole thing.
A lot of people do ghost hunts here, a lot respectful, because they will insult and shout at the spirit to try and, because they're under a lot of pressure, I suppose, from their guests or whatever, or because they desperately want something to happen, they will sometimes shout and insult the spirits to try and get more of a reaction, and sometimes it works. I personally wouldn't do that.
No, that's right. Okay, this is me coming up the stairs in what is reputed to be Britain's most haunted house, and it's 20 to midnight, and I'm now alone, and these are the various exhibits, and I think spending a night in a haunted house is probably one of those things that you should do at least once during your lifetime, really. I might just go and sit. I might sit somewhere quiet, maybe. Where shall I sit? I like to sit here. Here we go. Oh, it's 20 to midnight, and I don't know. Oh, that's interesting. Why is it doing that? We're holding them straight. Ooh, okay. When they cross, that means something's here, and they just crossed. So I hope that if something is here, somebody is here, that they kind of think favourably of me, because I'm not here for bad reasons. Okay. Is it a man that's here with me? Is it a girl? Okay. Okay. I mean, my hands are perfectly still, they're not moving. Again, when they cross, there's something here. So they're crossed again, and my hands aren't moving. Hello? I hope you're okay, whoever you are. I don't know what to say. Is that where you are? See, the rods are moving again, and moving towards a certain direction. They're still crossed. Okay. Interesting. I'm curious as to the rods moving, because my hands, as you could see, were perfectly still. I'm tempted to put my glasses on because I'm short-sighted. And so if there was something to see, I'd probably miss it. So. I looked at my watch and it's midnight, which for any sort of age-old horror fans would know, midnight is the witching hour. I don't know if that's actually true, but it's the hour that we associate. I'm going to try and both film myself and sort of go for a bit of a wander. I have a lamp as well. Can anybody hear me? If you can hear me and you know I'm here, could you make a noise? I'd appreciate that. There's Lucy here. I'm tempted actually to turn the light off for a moment and to sit in the darkness. I think I shall bring the lamp a little bit closer. There we go. I'm going to turn the... There we go. So I'll turn the light off. And it is dark. And I'll turn the light off, not to test them or to provoke them, but maybe my light was I don't know, it was kind of being a bit negative towards them perhaps. But because I'm a cowardly custard, I've I just kind of heard something then as well. I don't know what it is. Probably my imagination, because I have a very active imagination. Let's go for a walk. There was a sense for presence in this room, which is the room where Mr. John Davis mainly frequents, and in here let's just try a bit of crystal work. I don't know if it's going to work, but why not? It didn't work for me earlier, I've got to confess. That's probably because she may not like me. But anyway, there's the crystal. Little Lucy's here. Hello. My name's David, and I hope you're okay. I'm just wondering if you could move this crystal for me. You don't have to, but it would be nice if you could. Just to give me a sense you're here. I'm not going to hurt you. Could you move it? Could you move the crystal? Just a little bit. Could you move it a bit more? Could you move it some more for me? Could you move it some more? Yeah, that's brilliant. That is pretty spectacular. That is amazing. It's absolutely amazing, because my hand's perfectly still. As you can see, my fingers aren't playing any tricks. It's you moving it. That's brilliant. Can you do it some more? Can you do it some more? Wow. Okay, that's cool. That is pretty amazing. That is absolutely... wow. My hand has not moved. That's you doing that. Wow, do some more, go on then. Do some more, can you do some more? Look, backwards and forwards, wow, that's so cool. Wow, that's amazing. You're very clever. You're a very clever girl. Yeah, do some more, That is really clever. That is amazing. Wow, thank you so much, Lucy. You're very clever at this. You are very clever at this. It's fun, isn't it? It's fun. Can you make it go round and round? Can you make it go round and round? Could you? Can you make it go round and round for me? Wow, okay. Well, thank you anyway. Wow, that was I wasn't moving it, wasn't playing any tricks, and earlier I tried it, and it didn't happen, and it did, and it moved by itself. Not by itself, because Lucy moved it. That's interesting, I have no explanation for that. That's, apart from the fact that it's Lucy that did it. Yeah. Thank you, Lucy. Thank you, Lucy, for doing that. Well, okay. What's interesting is it's kind of come through here towards the stairs, and it's here. I'm really suddenly very cold. That's not because there's a draft. But from here to here, I suddenly feel very, very, and I don't mean like a wind is blowing on me, but like a chill through the bones. I mean, those are the stairs down there, so it's not from there, it's just here. It's just here, and it's really here, just in this space here, in front of the plague cottage. Where a draft could be coming from. My lantern. I'm getting more light off the phone than I am off the lantern. This draft. So I went down and the outside door was kind of open, and it's a cold night. No, it's still there. As soon as I've... It's not a draft. As soon as I've walked back into this one area here, it's like cold in the bones. I thought maybe there was a draft blowing. This is the area where it's said that a young soldier has been seen at times, and he's seen to be hanging, and apparently he was a soldier, and he committed suicide so that he wouldn't be tortured anymore. It's a terrible way to go for anybody. See, now I don't feel that chill. I'm really interested, and I'm going to give this a shot again. And seemingly there's nothing here. They're pointing, see, at 45 degrees. My hands are still. If there's somebody here, could you let me know? Can you give me a sign? Can you give me a sign if you're here? Can you give me a sign? Can you give me a sign? And they've crossed. The rods are crossed. My hands aren't moving, it's not a trick in the handle, these are old bits of metal and they've crossed, so that would signify that somebody is here. Can you let me know which direction you're in? Could you point the rods in the direction where you are, where you're standing? Could you turn the rods to both face where you are? Both of the rods to point in the direction where you're standing. Can you do that? I'd be appreciative. I would appreciate if you could do that for me. If you could point to the direction you're in, both of the rods, I'd be appreciative of that. Is that where you are? Is that where you are? Hello, good evening. Well, good morning now, I should say. Thank you for showing me which direction you're in. Thank you. I won't test you or ask you again. You've been very kind to do that, thank you. I'm not a scientist, so I can't give a scientific explanation for that, but it's interesting the fact that I asked a question and that question was answered in a very simple, for my mind, way. Interesting. Okay. It's 10 to 1 in the morning now, and the whole purpose of this film is it's not to debunk and it's not to prove, because I don't have those skills. But it's interesting that with the crystal, because I tried it earlier when Janet and her brother came in, and she had the crystal and she asked Lucy to move it, and it did. And then I had a go and it didn't move at all. And I wondered whether that was because they didn't know who I was. And yet, once Janet and her brother had gone, and I was by myself, as you saw, I asked Lucy if she could move the crystal, and very kindly she did. And I've never tried anything like this before. I don't know anything about dowsing rods or crystals, and crystals I've always felt a bit, they're normally bought by middle-aged women that are into yoga. No offence to middle-aged women that are into yoga, but you know what I mean. So I don't know anything about crystals, what crystals do, what kind of crystal does what. But the fact that I asked her to move it, and she did, and it wasn't just, and it was moving a lot. And I've come into this other room, and I've asked what I believe is John Davis if he could move the rods to reveal that he was here, and they have, not just once but twice. I don't have an explanation for that, nor would I ever say it's anything definitive. I know there's magnetics in the world and all this kind of business, but it would lead me to consider it worthy of further investigation, that's for sure. I'm going to kind of conclude my night here. And it may seem a bit hokey, but I just want to say thank you, really, to whatever ghosts or whatever spirits are here for being kind to me, I guess, and being respectful towards me, as I hope I've been towards them. It's in this room that John Davis has possibly revealed himself, and if that is the case, thank you for treating me kindly, and we'll hopefully see you again. Not anytime soon, but when I come and visit again. That's what I meant. See, even with my cynical nature, I don't want to tempt fate. So maybe sometime in the future, maybe you will find peace. Let's go through. This is in the room, I think, little Lucy was. I think she likes this room, but it was in this room that the crystal, she made the crystal move. So Lucy, thank you, little soul. May you find peace as well. And the room through there with the chill factor, I think I'll skip that. Take it easy, John. Take it easy. Back down the stairs.
I'm not sure what I saw that night in Shrieve's house, and it's not particularly conclusive. Dowsing rods, crystals, areas that felt a bit cold. I didn't actually see anything. But do I think there were ghosts there? It's possible. It's certainly worthy of further investigation. It's not the smoking gun to end all smoking guns, that's for sure. But with so many people having seen things around the world, I can't discount it. Everybody in their own way is a little bit haunted. I remain open-minded and would search further for a solution. Maybe one day I will see a ghost. Whether or not I'll be happy about that remains to be seen.